Welcome, everybody. It is August 3rd, 2021, and this is the Cloud Custodian Community Meeting. I'm your host for the day, George Castro. And before we get started, please be aware that there is a code of conduct in effect and that today's meeting is being recorded and will be put on YouTube, as well as the chat transcription we'll be putting in the notes. So welcome back. It's Tuesday. We start off with introductions. Is there anyone new to the meeting that would like to introduce themselves, or someone who hasn't had an opportunity to talk or say hello or want to introduce yourselves? This is your chance. You don't have to. It's totally optional. All right. Looks like everyone's serious business today. All right. Agenda items. If this is your first meeting or your first video that you're watching, we have an agenda that we publish here on HackMD. And then what I do is I take all of these notes and I publish them to github.com/cloud-custodian/community. And I always make sure I put those links, and I'm always sending those to the Google group as well. So check out the list if you're not already subscribed. And when you do subscribe to the Google group, you will automatically get an invite to this meeting. So that's how that works. The first one I added, I am calling this Called for Demos. Basically, I just wanted to kind of tell everyone that we can kind of run this meeting how we want, how we feel is most useful for the community. So last meeting, someone had mentioned how they were using Cloud Custodian in a certain way, and everyone thought that was kind of cool. So I think it'd be kind of cool if we just had a reserved spot every meeting, 5 to 10 minutes in the beginning. If someone in the community wants to show a demo on how you're using Cloud Custodian, or you figured out a cool thing, or you got a cool hack, or you broke something, we can leave that there, because I think it's just useful for all of us when someone is sharing with the community all the stuff that they're learning while they're using the tool in anger. So if you have any of these, or you know anyone that's doing anything cool and wants to do a demo, we could just like kind of make that a fun little thing, kind of a little like virtual lightning talk, as you say, and that'll maybe add a little bit more excitement as well to the meeting, so we don't have to read through GitHub's issues all day long. Okay, the next, any questions about that, or any comments or ideas that anyone wants to share with the group on that?
I was just saying to in the chat, like, if you don't have a demo, but you know someone who does have something really cool,
yeah,
please encourage them. Although, yeah, no pressure, but it's always so fun to see how everyone is using Cloud Custodian, especially since it is such a flexible tool. So yeah, I would love it. And if you're shy about it, like, I don't know, just get in touch and maybe we can figure out a way for you to demo by proxy or something.
Yeah.
But yeah.
There's nothing better than being voluntold to do a demo. Okay. Any other comments on demos? Policy testing is next. This one is on hold since Marco's on holiday, but there's a link there if you want to leave feedback on the issue. Any comments on this one? I don't think so. The next one, make Gitter easier. This is kind of like my long-term project to try to make chatting in Cloud Custodian a lot more fun than it is. I've tried 2 or 3 different new clients this week, and I'm kind of settling on Element on being the least worst one. So
Element doesn't support threading. So sorry, it's probably worth framing this up. Gitter is owned by GitLab. It's been open sourced, and it has the plus side of anyone can get to it via web browser. We have social auth enabled. Gitter development is pretty slow. They've partnered up with Matrix Foundation to support Matrix bidirectional communication through any Matrix client. And so when George is referencing trying out some of the Matrix clients, I think that's in reference to that. Yeah. So one challenge I think with Matrix itself is I don't know that the protocol itself has support for threading.
I see a new client coming out every day on Hacker News, and I try them, and they're all kind of like nascent. But I'm just
it reminds me of Jabber.
Yeah, it's like the old days of that. So I'll keep an eye out for that. If anybody finds anything cool or very interesting. There's a WeChat plugin too, but I didn't want to go too far back into like my 90s Linux life. So if yeah, there's a WeChat plugin for
I'm checking that out right now.
yeah. I don't know if I should have mentioned that. All right. Next up, regular weekly doc sprint sessions. Liz or Carl or Liz, any of you want to give the group an update on
our sesh?
Our sesh?
It was it was me, George, and Carl. Hi Carl, I see you. And it was really, really, really productive. Got a lot of feedback regarding opportunities where the documentation can be improved, and how we can also or accommodate different learning styles. Some things we talked about were breaking things down into smaller, like little how-to videos, maybe developing some tutorials, certain topics that need to be explained maybe a little bit more clearly or more in depth, such as C7 org and C7N mailer. And we actually opened our first PR on the documentation. So it can also be a really cool opportunity for folks who maybe want to get more into open source contribution or feeling like a little bit intimidated or new to it. Sometimes it's a little easier to come on in, commenting on documentation pull requests. But yeah, we actually have an artifact that came out of that with actual improvements. I have to give George credit for this one because our first PR was about removing the dollar signs from all of the run commands. Since I don't know about the rest of you, but I have definitely fallen victim to copy pasta. Oh wait, I wasn't supposed to copy that pasta. Yeah, it was really awesome. I encourage all y'all to come check it out, and to go ahead and bring something maybe specific that you're like, this piece is really challenging to understand, because more than that, I think it was also a very validating session, because it was cool to be like, oh, this other person has had trouble with this as well. There's not some kind of like, I don't have some kind of deficiency, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine that has the additional benefit of maybe helping soothe that imposter syndrome that tends to affect us all. So yeah, anything you want to add to that, George or Carl?
Yeah, the PR brought up some questions on how we're doing installations, and I see AJ has added something to the agenda that will lead to some discussion. So hey, now we're talking about installation improvements, so that's always good. Carl, anything to add about the doc sprint? I'm going to try to do a PR once a week from just listening to people talk, and then in the background I fix it.
No, I think the last change didn't go through on the PR though, the one that we separated by OS.
I need to check because I made some changes and pushes this morning.
But it already got merged because all the issues were resolved on the PR and it was already approved. It just got merged.
Is the page live? Do we know?
Doc publishing is about 30 minutes, I want to say. I will note that you didn't get the README. It's about a 30 minute
I
process.
did get the README too. Okay, that's a good point. No, it doesn't look like the changes are live. But all right, yeah, I could check on that after the meeting and just make sure. I'll just double check. Anything else?
Not for my part, though.
All right, thanks. All right, rename master to main in GitHub. Kapil, any progress on this one? I think you've been on the road all week.
Yeah. No, I just need to double check. I will probably kick the tires on a fork just to sanity check it with an open PR. If we do that, then I think we'll be good to go.
Got you. All right.
I would say it's also probably a low priority task. I think.
Yeah. Do you want me to backlog this? I don't know how I ended up in the main agenda. Oh, I know what happened. You put it in the main agenda, and I neglected to put it in the backlog.
Yeah, I'm fine with it in the backlog. I just don't want to forget about it. But also, we also are due for a release as well.
Do we want to talk about this?
Sure. Generally speaking, I think we try to hold to like a 4 to 6 week cadence on releases.
Okay.
So more time based, whatever get merged goes in that release, keeps it relatively simple and predictable. I think the significant major thing that went in this past release is now there's a deprecation framework, and Validate has optional, Validate will log deprecation warnings and has an optional mode for flagging them as exceptions. And the intent was to try to use that over time to clean up some of our compatibility syntax that we've been carrying since day one. Day one being 5 years ago. And what that deprecation policy is still open-ended. I was leaning to effectively a year after a particular syntax was deprecated that we would then go forward with that. Although I'd also have to play around and make sure we're in the SEM version scenario that lies. We have technically a 1.0 release inbound at some point, which gives us some opportunity for that as well. So there's an open question with regards, and it probably needs a spec with regards to deprecations and what our policy, not so much the implementation, I think we have that. It's more about what is the actual formal policy for the project with regards to deprecations.
Okay. So that was my first question to you. Were you thinking aloud that we need a deprecation policy, or do we have a deprecation policy?
We need a deprecation policy. We have it. It was waiting on a deprecation implementation, which we have.
Got it.
But we don't necessarily have a formal policy with regards to. We do have a general. Historically, we've had a policy of trying to be backwards compatible, with the exception of bugs, and with regards to the deprecation policy, that represents a mechanism for us to cut out and get rid of outdated syntax. But how that looks like from an end user perspective over time is the question. And also how that looks like from a semantic versioning perspective, I think is an open question. I don't know that we would necessarily line them up strictly, but then we're not really following some version. So, yeah.
Do you have? I'm just going to ask you random questions if no one else is. Do you have an idea for like a deprecation timeline? Like, are you talking like a year base, or are you talking like N-2, or?
I was thinking a year.
Okay.
Well, at least, yeah, I was thinking of a year, but I think at minimum maybe 6 months. But I was probably going to gravitate to a year.
Okay.
Although I'm definitely open to feedback on.
Yeah. Anyone got opinions on this?
It's kind of what the point of the spec was to get some requests for comments out. But if anybody here wants to chime in on it, definitely open to feedback.
Just kind of one question, since you mentioned the validation. So for that year timeline, when something is deprecated, we would just expect that when we validate or we run, it's just going to spit out a warning and give some hint about that timeline.
Yeah, Validate will split out a warning, and I don't know if we have the annotation stuff in there to support the year marker for it. Ideally, it would be something that would, it's ideally something that would actually mainly cut over. So that way, if you have a release and you don't upgrade, you don't get hit with it, so to speak.
Right.
So it would be an explicit flag, and we'd probably need some sort of CI thing to hey, the year's up, you know, gotta switch this one over, so to speak, as just an ancillary CI script, regards to RelEng. But the current validate command support will automatically output deprecation warnings and has a flag for treating them as errors.
Okay, cool.
Any other questions on this?
Sorry, when I say current, I mean the unreleased.
Any other questions on the release? Yeah, I'll sort of.
I don't
Oh,
I
go ahead.
don't know if this is like related or would be in scope for this, but would there also be like, I guess what I'm thinking is like some kind of resource for common troubleshooting, or is that just like too big to try to like try to consider like all those like kind of not edge cases, but just how to help people through it, or is this something that generally goes smoothly, or just wondering how we can provide some kind of
Sorry.
support, or is that
Are-
if that's even in scope?
I'm not exactly entirely sure what you're referencing. Are you talking specific to upgrades, or are you talking about a general project FAQ with regards to common errors?
Maybe when it comes to upgrading.
Generally, we assume that we're running in unattended systems that are auto upgrading. So generally speaking, upgrades have been smooth. The few cases where they have not been smooth are related to us fixing a bug that broke something that shouldn't have worked in the first place.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that answers that question.
Any other questions? All right, moving on. AJ, you added recommending PipX for non-contributor installs. And then you send us here. Want to walk us through this?
Yeah, and that so and that's I'm excited to be able to ask this in a with a group like this, because I think PipX helps. Right now, the getting started has people manually creating a virtual environment, installing Custodian into that, and then anytime they're going to use it, they have to make sure that that environment's activated. And it's just a little bit of a chore. PipX kind of hides all that, especially when you're not contributing. If you just want to use a tool, use a PipX install. It manages a virtual environment under the hood and just puts the binary on your path. So it's a nice way to work. I have recommended it to folks in the past. Never really thought about recommending it officially in the docs until the project got pulled under the Python Packaging Authority a couple months back. And that seems like, if nothing else, that's a symbolic gesture that it's a blessed path. And I think it makes some uses of the tool a little bit more consistent, predictable, and removes a couple foot guns. But I'm also comfortable with it, so I'm totally biased. So if anybody else has,
I think it's super helpful for people that are not Python users, because I've seen people trip up on stuff left and right. And so there is some nice value to it as far as documenting that usage. I think it would actually be a great question if we were going to do like a community user survey of how do you actually, like, how do you install Custodian? Like, are you running your own Docker? Are you running the public Docker images? Are you doing a pip install? Are you checking out from Git? That was actually one question I had for PipX is, can it also do a Git install of an egg, so to speak, or wheel or package? Yeah.
Yeah, and you can install from master or specific branches on there, and it'll infer the package name. So that's handy, even if you're using master, not a release, or main, as we may be doing. Yes.
I think the other so we currently publish fully present dependency trees, which should play well with this as well. I think there was some inkling about, and I think this partly depends on how much of a pain the installer stuff is, installation is. So this represents a good lightweight thing that obviates most of the Python package management for people. The other consideration was whether or not we actually just want to ship like binary, like something compiled with like Nukta. And one other question that came up in the context of CNCF was package signing. PyPy doesn't currently have great infrastructure for this. It is under development, sponsored through Facebook. I know that there's been a lot more supply chain type of attacks, and just trying to noodle through what we can do for users to give them that additional assurance. The one thing we could do today is potentially signing Docker images. Not with Notary, unfortunately, because Notary v1 does not support the signing, doesn't work across repos. So if you move the Docker image to a different location, effectively the signing breaks. V2 is still under active development. Google and has been doing stuff with the Cosign project, part of Sigstore, that is lightweight and quite usable. So at least we could, and it's effectively a detached signature that's also published to the registry. We could do that. I guess I would also be interested to know if how much of that is relevant or interesting for folks on this call.
And Sigstore specifically for signing what?
Docker images.
Got you.
Using the ED 25519 elliptical curve, otherwise known as Dan Bernstein's curveball.
Okay, and then I'll find the link on the in progress for pip signing.
The only place to find progress on it is actually on like a Zulip server.
Oh, okay.
The PI Zulip server. I can try to find a link. It is bewilderingly hard to find this stuff. I think you have to do PyPy Zulip tough. TUF. Yeah.
Are there any platformy things that we need to take into account, AJ, with this? Like, I'm assuming it's just like pip as far as runs anywhere Python is.
Yeah, I mean the install across platforms is pretty consistent. If anything, I think it's a little bit easier than pip once you get it installed. I mean the issue there is that folks are going to generally have pip available. The confusion there, I think Kapil was kind of alluding to this earlier, is that their pip may be pointing somewhere that they don't want it to, and they don't know it until they try to install stuff and it breaks. So pipx is more of a deliberate install.
Well, I mean, so there's a lot of malware out in package-land now. I think the question is also we need clients that are also going to do verification. It does look like Anaconda has some support for it already. And sorry, George, I dropped you some links to, if you look on the warehouse GitHub project, has a GitHub project on its repo just for this tough integration, which is signing infrastructure integration.
Okay.
Which
okay, I've got this.
It's unclear where that's going, but yeah.
Any other comments on this or opinions?
I love this idea.
This is less bike sheddy than I was expecting.
Pardon?
The conversation was less bike sheddy than I was expecting.
Oh.
Well, it's bike sheddy just partly because signings. So we can't do anything with PyPy.
Yeah.
And if that's where people are actually installing from, not particularly useful. Cosign and Docker images is possible, but it's only it would be fantastic to actually validate how often that actually gets used.
Right.
If we could, but yeah.
Now, if
actually, that's a different question I had was with regards to image publishing. We're currently publishing images to Docker Hub. Docker Hub started to enforce some crazy rate limits. If there is consideration about publishing to some of the cloud provider registries, I think I've reserved Cloud Custodian on GCR and ECR for that purpose, but also don't know if that's going to be useful or not.
Has anyone asked you?
Nope.
Yeah.
I noticed this pain in our CI, like the number of runways in our commits to master fail on CI is because of some Docker rate limit issue.
Okay, so it's actually affecting testing then.
It doesn't as much on Custodian, but I have other projects that do. It depends on whether or not you're logged in or anonymous as you hit Docker. And yeah, I think I tweeted about it when this thing was going around. Like Google had like the understatement of the year with regards to how much this was going to burn people.
I mean, would it make sense to have something like depending on what cloud package you install, it pulls from those images? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like if I install the GCP stuff,
our Docker image is an omnibus, so it has all the things. Actually, I think that, so we publish like 4 Docker images, but it's more based on the functional tool you're going after versus the cloud provider itself. The omnibus aspect applies to, or is in reference to those images shipped with all providers.
Okay, gotcha.
Otherwise, we'd be in a compatibility support matrix of 16 Docker images.
Okay. So what do we want to do about these? Do we want to ask for volunteers to investigate these? Anyone want to? Are we just noting these down? Are we finding these issues?
I think we're just noting them down, and if people have feedback on that itself, or are interested in this topic of what we should be doing to supporting end users with regards to supply chain attacks and via package signing. Definitely interested. I think there's open question there as well for potentially a user community survey on how are people actually installing today.
All right, I'm going to try PipX because I want to see if I can run like the release version and switch over to the Git version. Like, can I just switch back and forth and stuff?
Yeah, you can. And I would say that is all worth trying. I think these are the idea of how end users are installing it and how we're building or signing and then how we're publishing seem like they're all related issues, but we can sort of handle some of them independently. Like I think if we use PipX, that could be independent of some of the signing stuff. Because right now we're just telling them to use an unsigned pip install anyway.
Well, and also because PipX has no support for signature verification.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So do we know who's further along, Pip or PipX, when it comes to signature stuff?
No, they're both at 0.
Okay, gotcha. Packaging. All right. Any other questions on packaging? I'm getting like distro nightmares now. Thanks, Kapil. All right. With that, any other agenda items or things that someone would like to bring up?
You want to do a key signing party?
All right. Before we move on to PRs, Umair, you want to run over the events we have coming up next week?
Yeah, we have the same Cloud Custodian 101 and a workshop coming up next week. I think the links are the same that you have, it's just the date changes.
Yep.
And we have one in September. So I was about to log out to pick up the kids, but you called me at the right time.
Sorry. All right. I just want to make sure everyone's aware that we do have those workshops and stuff. So tell a friend. That will be most useful. And we've got those. Is this next week's being recorded? I don't know the recording schedule.
No, we just do it live so we can.
Okay. All right.
So we had 50 plus in the last one, so pretty cool.
Okay.
And I think a lot of people, some of the people here were joined as well. Yeah, same content as last time. So we are trying to get 101s for the next couple of months, but the next version would be more advanced topics.
And then we got a list last time of advanced topics we like to see. So far on top of the list, we have the mailer.
Yeah, mailer.
Yeah, it seemed to be the overwhelming favorite for the next content that we make. So does anybody have any content they'd like to see while we're on it? Umair, you could go. I got this. Good luck.
George, are we?
Oh yeah, different presenters as well.
Well, but apparently I'm the only one signed up for next week, unless you want to join me.
I will be there.
So yeah, different presenters. It'll be me and George. So you want to just come hang out for the commentary.
For sure. All right. With that wraps up the formal agenda. Normally after the formal agenda, we just go through some PRs. This is optional. So if you've got another meeting, feel free to bail. If not, we're just going to run through some of these PRs that we've been looking at. Kapil, anything burning today for you?
I'm just trying to get through some PRs. I think the GCP one on IAM's almost in a good state. I was going to look back through to there's a config RDS snapshot that I was trying to work on, and then was going to try to circle back to Pertish's code deploy application one. Are the 3 PRs I'm trying to get in before release, and then I need to spend a little more time with Todd's error recording, TJ's error recording PR, partly in reference to understanding how it behaves from a memory perspective, since it's keeping additional copies of the resource set. I wasn't sure if we need to use a weak dictionary there, but yeah. So 3 PRs in particular that I'm looking at, and as far as release, and then hopefully trying to cut a release before this meeting next week.
Okay. Do you have? I'm just going to ask you a random associated question. Do you usually have like a release date? Like, do you try to go on a Tuesday? Is there like a checklist that you go through, or do you just cut one?
The only hard and fast rule is no Fridays, no weekends, and inclusive of Friday. Okay. As far as the release process itself, it is mostly automated, and it is, and then at post release, we do a dependency upgrade and version bump in trunk so that we can distinguish people that are coming to us with errors if they were actually on the release or if they're on trunk.
Okay. Are you the only one that can cut releases right now?
No, I believe.
You probably know where I'm going with this.
I think there's 2 other people that had it. Stefan Gordon, who's one of our Azure. Actually, there's 5 people. Sunny, Mandeep, Stefan, and myself. Or 4 people. There's a bot in there too.
Okay. Do you know where I'm going with this next? AJ knows. I could. Do we want to try to to have someone shadow you, learn how to do the release?
I'm game.
Anyone want to volunteer? I'll definitely sit in with you. I'd like to
follow along there.
see you and do it.
Yeah, I'm down.
Release party.
Yeah, why don't we just hop on and then you just show us, and then maybe AJ could do the next one or something. If possible, if you wake up that day and you're like, I got to get this release out.
Yeah, that's typically what happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, we could try to set something up for next Monday.
Yeah, I don't know. I just would feel way better if other people that aren't you could release, so we can, spread the wealth for sure. So
Okay.
All right, let's try to do that. If not, we could try it again in 4 weeks, right? Like if you wake up and you look at your schedule and you got to get the release out, then we got to get the release out.
let's set up like do it there. It doesn't take that long. It's like 30 minutes.
Oh,
the
okay.
only
All right.
the only the other thing we do is we actually publish to test PyPy, and actually test our packages before we actually push to live PyPy.
Okay. Good to know. Let's see. Most of these, I think we're just waiting for people to get back with us on, so we don't really have anything burning or on fire unless anyone has something they want to bring up. Kyle mentioned he got the information he needed from you from Gitter, so that's all set. Anybody else have a burning PR or thing like that? Give everyone 15 minutes back. Hey, all right. Any last agenda items or hey? Everyone's like, no, I just wanna go. So that's fine.
No
All right,
agenda items. Just lots of gratitude for everyone showing up today. And who's been showing up, the past couple meetings. And please, invite your friends. And if you know folks who are like trying to get into this kind of stuff, please let them know that we have the 101s and the workshops. And if you also have any specific places where you think the documentation could be an opportunity for improvement, please go ahead and let us know. And thank you so much for your participation in these meetings. You are what makes the community.
All right. And the video will be up later on today. Worst case tomorrow. And as always, the notes, I will make sure I'm sending them to the list. And with that, last call, going once, going twice. All right. Thanks, everybody. You can have 20 minutes back, and we'll see everyone in a week. Cheers.